maybe as we move on with the presentation and talk about what we are doing and the situation of the migrant workers and Rohingya people, I would request our participants to put on the chat box a bit about how the constitutional history of our country has, of their particular countries. If you're from Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Malaysia, any other country, how it has really impacted you as a person and personally impacted you. So I'm going to put this question down on the chat box as well. I request Tarannum, who is also a co-presenter of ours, to put the question on chat box. And while I say this, I would like to give an example of my life, how it has impacted me personally, in my personal life, how the constitutional struggles. One, I became a lawyer because of a Bollywood movie which had a character which was based on my justice hero Asma Jahangir. The Bollywood, it was a very mainstream Bollywood movie called Veer Zara. It was a love story of my favorite actor Shah Rukh Khan, and I went to the theater just hoping to watch a movie, but it talked a lot more about the relations between India and Pakistan, the complexities of our constitutional challenges, and various more around it, more subjects around it. And it inspired me to become somebody like the character that represented justice and spoke for the human. I learned the word human rights for the first time from that movie. And on research, I knew the character was inspired by Asma Jahangir, and I read about her, and I decided, and it was in fifth standard when I was around 11 or 12 years old. And since then, I decided I want to be a lawyer. The reason I'm discussing this with you is because the relations with India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and a lot more countries that are there in the region around Asia have a very intertwined history that goes back to a very shared culture, society, and also struggles, constitutional struggles. Our constitutions, in a decolonized society that we live in today, our constitutions give us that instrument, which is the means to realizing the greater rights that we seek to achieve, because all our countries have problems and issues that we have gone through. If we, all of us, sit down with our grandparents, great grandparents, especially in the South Asian region, we discuss about the partition, about how it impacted them, and probably in our close family, in our close relatives, we all have migrants, we all have a refugee background. We are all refugees in a manner or the other. So I'm going to look at the chat box in case we have any um, answers to about their right. Okay, so we have no answers yet. So, but we are going to wait. If at all you come up, and if you think about any manner in which your constitutional history has impacted you, please do let us know about that on the chat box. And I would strongly urge you to also think about it even as you go back and just have this conversation in your head, because I truly believe that our constitutional history, our partition, our colonized history have a lot to do with who we are today and what our identities are today. Now, I'm going to discuss about the Lingering Shadows Initiative that we have founded. We're a group of 3 lawyers, that is myself, Ujjaini Chatterjee, my colleagues, Taranum Khatana and Mayurapriyan, who came together to be able to, of course, we have a chamber of lawyers where we take up cases as, paid matters, where we take cases and represent women. And of course, even in that, we have certain principles by which we go. We do not take cases of men against women. We do not represent social groups which are privileged against social groups which are marginalized, especially in cases of oppression and abuse. We oppose any kind of death penalty, and we seek transparency and accountability in all constitutional forms. And that's our policy as we go ahead in any kind of litigation work or outside the court advocacy work, etc. And the reason we came up with the name Lingering Shadows Initiative was basically my personal experience when I was working during the COVID-19 lockdown, which was imposed in India. the first lockdown in 2020. And this was the time when there was a mass migration of migrant workers who had literally no place to go, and these were the unorganized workers in I was in Delhi, national capital region, but it was across India, and they did not have food to eat, place to stay. A lot of them were bonded laborers, who are the modern day slaves. And India is a country with one of the highest number of modern day slaves. And the kind of abuses that they had been facing, and I was directly in contact with them. We had been doing their case in the Supreme Court of India. I was assisting in that case as well. And also at the same time, I was working on the ground to give them humanitarian assistance. And I felt it was an alternate to world, because New Delhi is a city that is up and coming, and it is one of the most expensive urban cities, where we have the brands, the malls, and all the wonderful things to look at. But it's funny how you go through the most well led down roads and the most posh roads in the city, and just one detour, one right turn, one left turn into that road, and you lead into an absolutely alternative world that exists, where people are living, families of 5 6 people are living in single rooms which are 10 by 10, sometimes camps which do not have ceilings or doors. They have open toilets, and you have pigs and animals roaming around. There's open drainage. There's no idea of hygiene. And when at a time when we were talking about COVID-19, sanitizing, and so important, the importance of cleanliness in situations per se, but there was absolutely no food to eat for these people. There were the refugees, of course, the Rohingya refugees, who are the most marginalized amongst the refugee communities because of their inherent backwardness, in which they have been denied education or any kind of skill for several years altogether, had been put literally in corners and overlooked in every way possible. They are still being taken into detention camps, not being given legal representation. Legal due process was absolutely unheard of. So I wrote an article. I'm posting the link of that article on the chat box if anybody wants to have a look. In which I called these people. I wrote about these people, and I wrote it as the unnecessary shadows. And well, at that point, I felt that these people hovered across our society as shadows, and really they were not needed. But now, as we are moving out of the pandemic and as time is passing on, what we feel is they're not unnecessary, they're lingering. These are the spirits, these are the people who make our buildings, who make our uh, you know economy, who are literally the backbone of our economy, the food deliveries men, the ones who do kitchen clean work, who do not get any representation whatsoever, who've come from the rural backgrounds, rural cities and villages of the country, who often come from marginalized communities, the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe communities, who've been historically marginalized in the country. The backward castes absolutely do not leave us. They are lingering in everything we do. They're lingering in this conversation. And that's also a reason why we felt it was very important to have a person from the community to talk about her requirements and what she feels are the points and issues that we as lawyers and social workers, humanitarian workers have to keep in mind. So we have with us Puja Kumari, who has joined us as well. And we would do a short interview with her where we talk about her experiences and see how she views this entire system. And of course, the words Parchaayi, Chaya, and Saba also mean shadows. Parchaayi is shadow in Hindi, Chaya is shadow in Bengali, and Saba means shadow in the Rohingya language. Now, I've already spoken to you about the migration and how the partition created a kind of crazy, aimless scattering of human beings who literally became animals. And while I say animals, I don't use this as a rhetoric, because I really, really feel that even though the Rohingya refugees within India or the migrant workers are human beings or Homo sapiens by species, they're a little less than us as human beings. So we cannot quite tell them they are human beings when they have nothing, no characteristic at all that human beings are supposed to get. They do not have water, they do not have toilets, they are not expected to have shame, they're not expected to have a heart when there are officials and police all the time calling them, who are you, you are an animal, you don't have the right to live. The newspapers call them terrorists. The prime time debates talk about how they should be kicked out of the country and not let stand, but we forget that we are talking about human beings. So that partition was also a time which impacted the Rohingya community, and I'm sure most of us are aware of how the Rohingya refugees came to being. But I just want to do a short recap how 1982 Myanmar came up with laws by which Rohingya community had to prove their citizenship, and the channels of proving became closed all the more when the documents became uh, denied to them, and eventually they became all concentrated in the Rakhine state, and babies were thrown in fires, women were raped and brutalized, men were tortured and sent in bonded labor camps and killed and disappeared, and it continues to happen. And as the clashes and the war in Myanmar gets worse, the things are nowhere near resolution. And it's a very long journey until the Rohingyas can actually go back home. And until then, they're scattered within Bangladesh and India. Uh, Now, of course, these are the pictures that you see on screen are the pictures that we had taken while on ground during the lockdown, and these are pictures of migrant workers. And they had, I mean, there were migrant workers I was in touch with about whom I was talking, and they're migrant because they migrate from different states of the country in India, and they come to work in other states which are economically a little better off. And I was in touch with some of them, and they were walking by foot for over 5,000 kilometers. Some of them died. There were people who died on the way out of thirst and hunger. It was an unimaginable situation, and at the same time at the same time, some of us were of course finding it a relaxing time in the COVID pandemic lockdown because it gave us some time to relax. But of course, as I said, the parallel worlds were becoming more and more prominent as we started working with the workers, and also the issues of right to food and right to life, right against torture and degraded treatment, right to dignity were some problems that came up very strongly at this point in time. Also, a point to be noted was the situation of the Rohingya refugee community. Of course, there are several other refugee communities in India, but I feel that Rohingya refugees are the most persecuted and backward because none of them are rich enough to find resources to go and one, speak for themselves, hire lawyers, or do some kind of proactive thing to be able to talk about themselves. And two, because they have a lot of intra community issues going on as well. The community is not as united as they should be, so there are the state forces and various other mechanisms pit community members against one another, and particularly the men, because whether it's in Bangladesh where the camp leader is called the Majhi, or in India where the camp leader is just the camp leader, it's a lot of it's kind of a political nexus of sorts, by which the camp leader kind of influences the elections and gets his power, and then starts literally harassing everybody. And the role of the camp leader has been of question for a long time, and invariably camp leaders are most often they're not men, and the women are again extremely marginalized, and there's sexual and gender based violence. And the it's very difficult to get through to them because the phones that are used, most families do not have smartphones. If at all they do, the phone is shared. It's shared between the family members. So a family of say 6 people, 7 people have one phone. And obviously, I mean, if the and the I mean, it's very difficult for women to even contact police or seek help, because a Rohingya woman knows that she'd rather be abused by her own husband than be abused by the officials who are going to send them to detention camps. We are going to talk about detention camps in some time, but it's quite a catch-22 situation. The UN RSD, the refugee status determination process, also became excruciatingly long, and a lot of people are still in the line to get their refugee cards. And even the Rohingyas, when they get refugee cards, they get detained in India, as their situation is extremely politicized and they remain very vulnerable. Um, so these are some pictures of the slums of migrant workers, which we had taken. So this is the train line by which, like, it's a live train line in which trains move. So you have trains moving. Can you see my screen? Is my presentation visible? Right. Okay. So in which the trains are moving, you see moving trains going, and right next to that are these shanties and slums. And even there, the migrant workers are not allowed to live in peace, because every second day there are demolition fears. You have that huge demolition machine coming and taking just one stroke, and the entire house falls apart, and these people are left homeless, without rehabilitation, without any compensation, without any support whatsoever. And of course, the Rohingyas have another issue altogether, in which they are on the verge of being transferred to the entire community is on the is they are shivering like animals in front of a butcher, waiting to be sent to detention camps, waiting to be detained, and waiting to be in a situation which is nothing short of torture. So before I move on further with the presentations on identity and dignity, especially of women, I would like to see if anybody has any questions. Any comments, any questions? All right. So I'll continue. I'm hoping that there would be comments or questions or something. In the, I think this is the last session of the day and of the conference also. So people must be a bit tired. But oh, there's a question. What is your plan keeping this? That's a very interesting question. What is our plan keeping this initiative sustainable? And that's something I really wanted to brainstorm with all the participants here. But yes, about keeping this sustainable, one, as a group of lawyers, we do commercial, I mean, not commercial cases alone, we do cases in which we get paid. And that kind of helps us sort of pay our bills, keep our office, pay our rent, etc., and go on with the work that we do. However, we also so Mayur, who is a part of our team, is also an artist. So he intends on he has already begun, and he intends on continuing this process, where he represents what he sees in the camps and the situations in the cities on his canvas, and kind of paints about it. And we are coming up with Rohingya refugee art, in which we paint about their situations, and we sell these paintings and kind of keep a little money for running this initiative, and also helping the community, and kind of being able to focus ourselves, because we also have to obviously sustain ourselves, otherwise it becomes very difficult. So that's how we sort of balance it. We are hoping to come up with Rohingya refugee merchandise, migrant workers merchandise, and notebooks, etc. And also, we as individuals, not just as lawyers, we have identified our skills by which what we do well, like Mayur can paint. I am good in writing and speaking. So I am trying to reach out to students and tell them how they can use feminist human rights lawyering as a profession, how this is going to work. And students who can pay us a bit. And I write about the situation and get paid for my writing, the journalistic work that we do. And Taranum also helps us with her. Taranum has particularly been useful in giving us her car, and she has funded her journeys across the city and working in the camps entirely. And she also writes. She's a researcher and a writer, and she does a lot of cases as part of the Punjab and Haryana state as a council for the women, and gives us that kind of support. So that's also a plan in progress. We are thinking about how we can do about it, but as of now, this is how we've been working. We take consultancy work also. Uh, what do you think should support them? Who do you think should support them? Any ways you can reach or support them directly? Yes. So, of course, as lawyers, we have to support them not only within the courtrooms but outside. Within the courtrooms, we have to be very careful when we seek representation, because the courts are not as kind as we would want them to be. And we have to be very careful, because there is the principle of do no harm in international law and refugee law, particularly with that one order goes wrong and then it's going to impact the entire community. However, we have to make interventions within the courtroom for their right to food, right to dignity. Even in detention, they have certain rights, and just basically the right to life that anybody on the territory is allowed to. But people from other countries, of course, can help us in our work by one, getting connected with us, giving us volunteers, where even, I mean, one can volunteer or intern with us or become a part of us, as in a part of our team, so that we can expand our team to exchange knowledge and share your experiences with us, to be able to go to the communities and work with them. And I feel that if we can reach out the words of the communities at an international, at a higher level, and by international I mean an Asian forum, which is a more decolonized, having the experiences of because we, a lot of our problems is because of our colonial past, and how international law in itself is a very colonial dominated sphere. So we can work together to decolonize these laws, and also write policy briefs, reach out to international organizations, seek accountability from even international organizations like UNHCR. Because in our experience, the UNHCR also requires a lot of accountability and transparency in their working. And I like to, I would like to add that we need to de-elite the international organizations. They're way too elite, way too elite to be working for people who, as you see, belong to these circumstances. So I think collaboration is the word here. And I would really, really want to speak to you, if you are able to join us in any way you can, in any capacity, as an organization, as a lawyer, as an activist, as a humanitarian worker, or just a volunteer and intern. We can work together in preparing our need-based assessments, reports, in writing the journalistic work that we do, in the painting work that we do. And as I said, we identify our other skills as well. Like, we also want to start English speaking classes for the Rohingya community. I speak English, so I can teach them, or make the community teach their language, and kind of bring the community in the forefront a little, to be able to sort of, because I feel that the Rohingya community is so disconnected from mainstream and popular culture because of their backwardness. They have not been able to write their stories. Like, Nadia Murad is able to write her excruciating story in The Last Girl, and talk about the Yazidi genocide and stand up for it. But if you go to the Rohingya community, you'll find a Nadia Murad in every camp. But sadly, their stories are not out. So if you work with us, if we can team together, we can help as many people as we can in bringing their stories out. How can they be employed to make their livings, or do you have land fields to support their agriculture? So this is a very difficult question for me to answer. One, see, agriculture and going and doing certain work is definitely possible. A lot of employment is generated in agriculture, and if we have a political will to give them work, we can do it. But the problem right now is the communities entirely, the Rohingya communities entirely thrown inside their camps, and they're not able to come out of it. There is some kind of suffocation that they suffer from. The minute they come out, they get detained or harassed by the police, or I mean, they're under surveillance the whole time, not just by the police and the state officials, but also from various people from within their camp. So when I'm going to talk to my clients in the community, I have to be very careful that nobody hears it, and no other person than the client. So the first step towards this is giving them enough empowerment in a manner that they at least remember that they're human beings. They have the community has forgotten for a long time that they are human beings, because the persecution it's intergenerational. So, and of course, they do certain meager work here, like selling ice cream, or having a little shop, or on the roadside, and selling chips or cold drinks, etc., pulling rickshaws. But that's really not enough. The income really needs to go higher, and they are under a lot of stress on that. So I think we can move on now. And thank you for all the questions. It was really nice to engage. And I shall now move on to the next part about what we do in Lingering Shadows. Now, I just want to add one point about invisibilizing the community that happens even as we work on the ground. So, of course, this is no breaking news that there is a lot of curtailment on the rights of human rights defenders as well in India. That's one major reason we as a group are scared of even accepting funds or going ahead and doing the kind of work that we can do. That's why we have to be very careful about making this model sustainable so that we remain safe, because taking people out of detention, if we also go in detention, it would be a tragic situation. And human rights defenders are very much under threat in India. And that's one reason for which even UNHCR affiliated organizations, UNHCR themselves probably, NGOs, all of them have a tendency to invisibilize the community. We tend to do our work very limited in a manner that the community does not come up. But that's something we have taken a decision as a part of policy of our work, where no matter what it is, we keep the community in the forefront and their stories, of course, keeping their safety in mind. We do not give their names out, we do not give their location out, we do not give their intimate details out. We are very careful about that. However, the point that the Rohingya refugee community is persecuted, migrant workers are persecuted in India, these points are something that we do not mess with. We do not negotiate on these 2 points that we put forth in every work that we do. So now I think Tarannum can take over now and talk about the programs that we run and how we work. And Tarannum, do you want to just talk a little about the programs that we do and the work that we've done so far? Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm on. Yeah. So basically, starting from where Jenny started, the entire complexity of problems within India comes from the very starting, comes from partition, comes from a place where there was a segregation of the population within itself. And that is where all the Islamophobia is rooted. And because the Rohingya community per se comes under Islam or follows Islam, that is one of the major reasons for it to be pushed into a corner. We need to see that India is complex in its structure in the way that we have some unique problems which are caste-based, which are based particularly for women in lower castes. They're not able to achieve any kind of legal recourse, any kind of social recourse for that matter. So when during the COVID lockdown, there was a time where a shadow pandemic was going on, and that was something that was globally true, that even within well-to-do households, as we say, there were women who were not being able to reach out because of the lockdowns. They were locked in their own homes, which were considered even more unsafe than them being outside. So what we did at that time, we created workshops where students could become a part of our initiative, and for that matter, contact people who did not have any means to contact us directly. So any kind of people neighbors who were helping other neighbors, all through the fact that they understood what kind of legal recourse they can take. Even women from well-to-do families here do not really understand that they can have a voice, they can actually come and speak up about things. And then because of the myriad of problems that within that is a poor community, and within the poor community, there is a refugee community. Even when we go to camps, we see that the poor community of the Indians is separated from that of the Rohingyas, which gives us this view that even within the poor community, the kind of understanding of their problems is not the same. They're both facing unemployment, they're both facing a problem of staying, they're both facing electricity and water issues. But even within them, they have an Islamophobic view, which has been cultivated by the common media, by the WhatsApp messages, by things that have reached them. And excluded that community or put that community into isolation. So the programs that we are working on right now are Parchaayi, which is for migrant workers specifically, where we focus on providing them legal aid, training them on laws, giving them a mental health assistant in a way. And Saba is mostly focused on Rohingya communities, where we will only like bring out the refugee problems along with the unemployment that they're facing. So in that, it not only becomes important to address the kind of trauma that people are coming from, where they have had to escape from their country and where they have had to escape persecution and then come into a place where they're again being persecuted. So it does not give them the time and the space to be in a proper mental health place or be in physical health, or they're not getting any facilities even when they are seeking asylum in another country. Uh, could we move on to the next slide? Yeah. So to address this, there is a sort of befriending scheme that we are thinking of, where to reduce the isolation or reduce the kind of ghettoization that is happening with the community by asking people to engage. Like even the groups which are social are not really aware. The NGOs are not really aware of the Rohingya community. So when they can come together and in a way talk to each other about their problems, the Rohingyas have luckily learned how to speak in Hindi, how to speak in Bengali. And that is something that even our population is very well versed in. So speaking in Hindi, Bengali, they will be able to tell each other the struggles that they're facing. A lot of people are unaware of it, and a lot of people even living right beside them are not willing to give them the ear, give them the time, give them a way of explaining themselves or a way of telling where they are coming from or why something has happened to them and how, why they want to be. So there's a lack of compassion, uh, a lack of awareness, a lack of understanding that there was a persecuted minority which has struggled all the way to come to a country where they feel that they might be accepted, because it's not like Islam is alien to our country. We have the maximum biggest minority is Islam. So understanding and giving them space is something that can be done, but is not being done actively. We have happiness scheme, we have art and culture. Art and culture, how Mayur focuses on their entirety is like, because we do not really have pictures from within the detention camps, or we do not really have any kind of proper pictorial representation, and we know that pictures are something that create a lasting impact on the mind. So something that it helps translate whatever the people are telling us, whatever the conditions are there, whatever they're telling us that are their problems, are being translated into art, are being translated into pictures to make this impact a little larger, make this impact, more lasting on the mind, more making the struggles, traumas more understandable. So in a way, translating them for the local population to understand that there is something that is much, much more complicated than what is being understood currently.
Tara, I would just uh, follow up with a question on this to you. Do you also want to talk about how easier it becomes for us to represent the stories through art and other mediums as compared to how we do it in the courtroom, or probably even write about it, because art gives us a bit more liberty to talk about the human experiences without being extremely pertinent on the facts and evidence, and kind of bringing it down to very basic objectives.
So within India, because there is a major population which is illiterate, a major population which is not understanding any kind of courtroom proceedings for that matter, access to justice becomes an issue, because courtroom proceedings are themselves not live streamed or not shown even to the local population. So when art comes into play, art is something that would completely make somebody pictorially understand the struggles, the problems, it would connect the people back to the communities, back to the problems, and back to the more than words would. more than any kind of talking would. I think that is something that we are focusing on. So,
Sorry.
yeah. So when we look at the background, we need to understand that because there is a multitude of problems within India, uh, and Islamophobia is one of the biggest ones, we need to go into the camps and understand that there is a different kind of culture happening there. They are not following the same culture that Indian Muslims are following. There's a very varied form of practice that is going on. So even when we talk about marriages, or when we talk about any kind of divorce, the kind of legal representation that you get in India is the personal communities get their own personal laws. They do not go by a uniform civil code. So we need to understand that even the refugee community should get its personal law, should get its cultural rights, should get its representation the way their marriages have to work, the way a legalization also has to happen of the marriages, because the kind of problems that the women are facing there are that multitude of multiple marriages are happening, and a lot of desertion is happening. So there's a concept of meher or dowry within local and Muslim populations, where bride price or a sort of consideration is given when a marriage happens. So when we understand that for the marriage, a bride is paying a price to get married, right? So looking at the unemployment and the kind of economic hardships that the community is going through, a man may marry a person just for the money, may marry a woman just for the money, and might desert her and marry another person in the same time period. This puts them into a very vulnerable position, because in the community, it is a very big taboo to pursue any kind of divorce or pursue any kind of separation. So once a woman is married, she's considered to be a part of the person, a part of that male counterpart, a part of, in a way, because it's a patriarchal society, only the male person is supposed to go outside and work. A woman is not expected to be able to earn her own income. So when socioeconomically we see the position of women, because women are not allowed to work outside, they greatly depend on the man. And when the man deserts them, it becomes a very precarious position for her, where she's not able to do any sort of earning for her own family, any sort of care for her own children. And because the community is denied any kind of access to livelihood, healthcare, education, there are restrictions on their movement, it becomes really difficult to come out of the camps and start working. Okay. Could we move on to the next slide? So considering the background that we have seen, and considering the locations of these camps, it is not something very alien that these camps are not very visible. These camps are right within the urban and metropolitan areas. And it's just a small detour that takes you to an area which is filled with garbage, which is filled uh, with a very bad terrain, where people are living in houses which are made out of cloth, which are made out of scanty plywood, which has been discarded. Uh, the main problem within these camps is any kind of electricity. There's no electricity, there's no lighting, there is no water in any of these camps. And women in particular face a lot of gynecological and bladder problems because of the fact that there are no washrooms in the camps. And it is something as basic as having to go and defecate. That is something that has been taken away. And there are community washrooms, but they are only available for men. So then this becomes a major problem for women, because women have to defecate in the open. And sadly, that it had happened very recently that a woman who was defecating in the open was subject to sexual violence of a sort. So that leaves them in a very vulnerable position where women are going outside and are prey to even more socialized and men and people trying to sexualize them even for the basic act of defecating. So that is something that is not very would say that is not very seen in other places, but obviously this is something that has become a major problem. And because of the fact that the community is so isolated, getting help for any kind of local health workers or ASHA workers or Anganwadi workers who are generally there for the local rural population to be addressed, it mostly happens that they see them as somebody who has come from outside, or they use the word "ghuspaitiye," or they use the word that they are immigrants, they are not supposed to be in our country. So why should we give them any kind of healthcare? Why should we give them any kind of support? So they push them into a corner where they're not getting any help, where they're getting infections, where they're getting gynecological problems, where there is no menstrual hygiene, there's no kind of menstrual cups, menstrual products, menstrual sanitary napkins even available. And because of that, there is a lot of infection and a lot of disease that is prevalent within the women of the community. Uh, Also, it becomes it is actually a day-to-day struggle for these women to do any kind of work, any kind of socioeconomic activity. The kind of uh, yeah. Jenny, can you take over right now? Yeah.
Thank you, Tara. And I really feel the point that you mentioned about the health and the circumstances that prevail within the camps when we are talking about the Rohingya refugees and the manner in which so ASHA and Anganwadi workers are appointed health workers who support women with their health issues, particularly during pregnancy, etc. But there have been instances where they have refused to support them, saying that they are terrorists and we should not help them. And the word terrorist is not something that we should take lightly, because this is a narrative being presented in India that all Rohingya refugees are the terrorists. And there have been TV debate. There are TV debates. In fact, yesterday before the Delhi High Court, there was a declaration by government council saying that the Rohingyas are terrorists and they have links with terror outfits and they are a national security hazard. And this has really made it difficult for the Rohingya communities, even those who are not in detention, to be able to survive within their camps, because the people around them, there's a lot of animosity. And it's interesting how these ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers are also women from migrant worker communities. Now, they themselves have a lot of struggles going on for them, where they are not about their wages, about uh, uh, can you not see my screen? Uh,
Okay, now we
is
can
it?
see it. Yeah, now
All
we
right.
can see it. Okay.
Thank you. So about getting their wages, and their matters have gone to the courtrooms as well. But then again, the thing is, in the hierarchy of oppression, the Rohingya women are the most oppressed of the oppressed. And in our experiences in the ground, there are certain things that we have observed, especially. I think this is important that we discuss that within our community here, because a lot of us go on the grounds who are educated and who have a degree in law or whatever. And we by default imagine the women to be backward. So in our head, of course, we are trying to give them human rights and empower them, humanitarian whatever, but we end up infantilizing them. We end up also dehumanizing them in the process by thinking that they have no idea what sexual hygiene or gynecological hygiene would be. And a lot of times we find volunteers, interns, and even lawyers going to the community and treating the community as a fodder for their statement of purpose or recommendation letters for international law degrees. And that is something that we found very problematic, because we have to be friends with our clients. We have to be able to treat our clients the way we would treat a client who's paying us full fees. And that is the kind of client based lawyering that we talk about, because a client cannot be excluded from her case, which is a very common phenomenon. And that is something that we are trying to bring a difference about. And that's why we have a migrant worker who is also a client here, and also a friend. And the reason I say friend, we don't call every client a friend, right? We have gone a step further and called her a friend here, because we feel that we can, while working in their cases, we can also empower them with their legal rights, so that while she lives in the community, she's able to talk to her other community members about what can work for her and what not, because there's so much fear, so much hesitation, so much apprehension within the women to be able to even go out there and talk about their rights, because they feel like probably there is nothing that can be done. I mean, this is the best that I can get there. I mean, I remember there was a woman who was extremely active from the Rohingya camps, and very vocal, not one of the shy women who are not very comfortable talking with outsiders. She used to talk to us, she used to work with us, but later we got to know that she was suffering from excessive depression and anxiety. In the middle of the night, she would just scream. And she had domestic violence and problems happening within her life, and also police harassment. She was just not able to deal with it. One night she went running towards a bus to just commit suicide and kill herself, and some of the other women saved her and brought her down. That's sign of excessive depression and mental health uh, crisis going on there. So there we have to not just give legal aid, but also mix our strategies in terms of looking after the communities. That's why we have the happiness scheme that I think Taranum spoke about, which is basically to take the community around the city of Delhi and at least expose them to the happier sides, take them out on a picnic for a day, probably have the women eat some good food cooked by them, let them talk about their recipes, let them talk about their fun and joyous memories, because refugees only talk about the sad memories. They live and relive their memories throughout their refugee status determination, throughout when we go to take their interviews, when we do their client meetings. They only talk about their traumas. Nobody remembers the joyous and happy memories. That is also something that we intend on doing. Now, when I speak about the work that we have done so far, we have written certain columns on the issues of migrant workers and Rohingya refugees. In fact, we are on the verge of coming up with a ground report on the situation of Rohingya refugees in terms of detention, in terms of their treatment by state enforcement officials and by NGOs and lawyers like ourselves. And we hope to share the ground report once it's out. And if you want to have a copy of that report, please drop your contacts with us and we shall email you and reach out to you to give you that report. Then, yes, the ground reports and surveys are very important in terms of understanding what the community requires. We prefer that the community tells us what's not there and what's missing, and we learn, because essentially we are young lawyers, and even if we were 100 years old, it wouldn't make a difference, because the community really needs to tell us. Like how a client walks in and gives us instructions, we tell the court we have instructions from our client, we take instructions from our clients who are Rohingya or migrant workers, because pro bono work doesn't necessarily have to be charity work. We do not believe that rights can be given away in charity. um, we visit detention centers. We have been trying hard with the offices, the foreign registration officers in India, to give us a chance to give legal aid in detention centers, to be able to go inside and meet our clients. And our requests have not been answered till now. So we are going to follow up on that again next week, which is going to be a crisis, and we are preparing for it. And of course, as lawyers, we have certain things in our hands, like the laws and empowerments. And also, for instance, the detention centers in India, the courts and the government have their directives about how a detention center has to be, what all rights have to be provided within that: water, dignity, electricity, child care, right to education. These are certain factors that we intend on creating some work upon. Legal training and support. We have been on TV to be able to talk about the rights of the Rohingyas and calling out politicians who were trying to really scream us down, but tell them that what you're doing is quite uncharacteristic of what's in the constitution of the country, and we better follow laws. But not sure if he heard us, but of course we did try speaking that out. And then, of course, art exhibitions, as we said, Mayur is trying to come up with his Rohingya art. And I think art can be a way we can reach out to popular sentiments and people, and also write fiction stories, and come up with publications. These are all things that we are working on. We're looking for publishers. So if you know anybody who can publish our work, or that's one way you can support us, if you can get in touch with us about how we can probably come up with a publication on the joys and memories and identity of the Rohingya community, which is, a genocide is basically not just to wipe people out, but to wipe memories out. And our job is to preserve these very memories. And memories are also good memories. We don't just talk about the laws. I think I personally derived a lot of inspiration reading Nadia Murad's Last Girl, and how it was so full of memories. It has good memories, it has the trauma, it has the absolute human degradation, and then it again comes down on the manner in which she rebuilds her life. And that's how we want to talk about the Rohingya refugee community, give them that sense of empowerment, that sense of humanization and rehumanization as a process. So we want to write about it as much as we can, record stories and narratives and memories and identity. Then we also have mentorship programs for interns and volunteers. We have some very committed interns and volunteers who have been interested in the migrant and Rohingya work and want to further their practice on that. And I think it's a very good idea to pitch on younger people to be able to pursue feminist human rights lawyering as a practice, because that really helps build lawyers for tomorrow. In at least Indian law schools, very little do we discuss about human rights lawyering as a practice, because it's believed that you don't make money. And of course, sustainability is a crisis. But if we come up with a bit of creative fundraising ideas, I feel that can work out. And of course, the upcoming months are going to tell us how we are going to do about it. But we do not intend on giving up on that route. And we feel that we have to really balance out. And human rights lawyering doesn't always have to be unpaid or pro bono, or done in a manner that's not sustainable. It depends on really where the pro bono work is required and how we can optimize the available resources and go about it. And that these are some of the conversations we have with our younger team members as well. Before, of course, the future work, I will go on for questions after I just briefly tell you a little about what we want to do. We want to do some strategic litigation in which we are able to build a refugee-friendly jurisprudence in India, which is a very hard task, because right now India's socio-political cultural situation is not conducive of refugees, particularly Rohingya refugees. I mean, even the Afghan refugees are Muslims, but fortunately they are slightly better off as compared to the Rohingya refugees. And I would identify their backwardness, lack of education, and poverty to be a very important factor playing in that kind of treatment, because there is nobody to speak up for them. So I think we have to become a medium for them to speak, but then the voice has to be theirs. We cannot appropriate their stories or speak on their behalf. So, of course, strategic litigation is one part of going and asking for the rights which they are entitled to. For example, even if you're keeping me in detention, you have to give me water. Even if you're keeping me in detention, you have to give me place to see the sunlight. And for children, right to education, etc. Then we want to train young lawyers and paralegals, volunteers, and of course quality. We do not want to compromise on quality. That's one reason we have not really moved out of Delhi NCR for the time being. We have not created a network which is beyond Delhi NCR and gone across the country, because we want lawyers who are really professional and committed to their work and have certain quality management in the work that they do. um, then paralegals and volunteers, we also want to take from the community. For example, we want Rohingya paralegals working with us, whom we tell them about the laws and give them training so that they can be like the first aid available within the community, and maybe an in-community lawyer out there. And some of them can be trained to become law clerks who can work in law offices, paralegals who can support lawyers, and eventually they can even get degrees in law and become lawyers themselves and take up cases for themselves in the country. do their own work, and that would also be an empowerment of the community at large. We want to do some certified courses, and that would also be a fund generation program where we can do some certified courses on international law, refugee law, because refugee law, again, as a subject, is very neglected. I'm not aware of any of the national law schools who provide even a certificate course or a diploma. I'm sorry, I mean, a graded course, a extra optional course on the Rohingya refugees. So that is something that we can really work on, and at the same time, this can help us generate certain funds. Then we want to work with institutions, especially international law schools and law colleges and other universities and institutions, to be able to get scholarships and reserved places for Rohingya women to go study and become a voice and a place of representation right there. Before we move on with this, can I just take a few questions? If anybody has any questions, any comments, any ideas, anything that they can help us with. I'm going to be here for your comments in any case. I mean, you can, even while we are speaking. What are the ways, Cherry ATP asks me, what are the ways of raising awareness more effectively for the younger generation? How can you communicate, making them trust if there's a religion barrier? Which legal service provider will assist them when they want to make complaints? What is the capacity of local federal court? Right, so there's quite a few questions. I'll take them one at a time. So about talking to the younger generation, of course, at this point in time, there is a lot of religious barrier in terms of Islamophobia in India, and there is no doubt about it. And of course, art makes one difference. Then there are, mediums like movies, etc. And we just feel that the befriending scheme sometimes helps when it's easier to hate shadows, but when you meet the people behind those shadows and know their stories, some of them, I'm not saying 100% youth can be changed or things, because it's a lot more complicated than that, but it really helps get some kind of connection when you know the stories behind of them. It is a tough task, but we do have younger people within India who are willing to work on these lines if they have a chance to. The problem is law schools and the situation at large of law students, also because they have high loans on their heads, they want to go the corporate way. They want to take a corporate law course and do some corporate law that's going to pay them from day one. If we can tell them that they can do some work which makes sense, which is also something which is their calling, because this work is also very gratifying. To be very frank, I don't think any of us are doing any charity work or pro bono work to be greater humans, but we just feel this work gives a lot of satisfaction end of the day, because it just gives us a, if I may say, a sort of savior complex, to be honest. At some point, sometimes there is a sorry.
I would also like to add that luckily the workshops and the kind of legal awareness campaigns that we were doing along with university students or students who are actually in college right now were very informative, and a lot of people contacted us to volunteer to help raise that awareness and to make small communities or neighboring in a way a local community which can help reach the particular records or reach a particular helpline where women are being able to report or are being able to even talk about whatever they're suffering within the pandemic, especially because there was no means of communicating and no means of coming out and asking for help or accessing any kind of legal recourse. So I think the younger generation is a little more open to the idea of understanding what kind of complicated problem is going on. And the younger generation is a little more willing to help once they are sensitized with the help of legal workshops and legal awareness campaigns.
Yes, absolutely, Tara, and of course, since there is a barrier, we have to keep doing our work, and that's also a part of what we have to do, the challenges ahead, and also the opportunities ahead. And which legal service provider will assist them, and when they want to make complaints? Now, that's us, of course. We assist them when they want to make complaints, and we give them the directions forward. Essentially, UNHCR is supposed to be the protector because they're refugees, and UNHCR is particularly supposed to be working with the refugees. But for some reason, it has not been as impactful on the ground that it should be. I don't know if any UN officials are here as audience. If they are, I would really want to be in touch with you and discuss about the transparency and accountability mechanism within UNHCR, because I feel UNHCR needs to be a lot more on the ground to be able to understand the actual requirements of refugees, and not invisibilize them to an extent that they do not understand the officials do not understand what is required for the community. It's easier to say on call that, I know you're in your family is in detention with a 3 months old baby outside, but just wait, we can't do everything instantly, and then just stop taking their calls. And please, please, please hire some people to take your helpline numbers. They are for refugees. The helpline numbers are always unanswered. So that is something which we find very problematic. And um, what's the capacity of the court? The court has every capacity. Of course, the court is quite. It's Indian courts are not absolutely taken over and as politicized as they should be, but their orders seem very political at times, and the court can do a lot if they want to. And yeah, it depends on the court's will. Sometimes it's the court's mood is very fluctuating. Sometimes it can give you huge rights, but in terms of refugee rights, I feel it's a bit short, because for some reason Indian courts do not understand the idea of refugees, the idea of jus cogens norm, in terms of not sending people back to a place of persecution, non-refoulement, and subjects like that. So I think in that, we as lawyers have a great role to play in terms of informing the court, keeping our documentation right, making our arguments strong enough, because outside the courtroom work, advocacy work can be angry, can be something that we write in terms of rhetorics, but within the courtroom we have to be really good at our job. We have to be able to highlight the laws, highlight the issues with evidence, with laws, cite the cases. And that's another reason we have to collaborate and work together as Asians and South Asians, because we have to cite interjurisdictional cases. For instance, there is a very high profile matter going on the case of hijab in India. And I recently came to know there was a very important case in Bangladesh that we could have cited before the court. Of course, there were Nigerian cases and a lot of great cases that were cited in the matter. However, it would make a lot of sense if we collectively work towards building a South Asian and an Asian jurisprudence in terms of refugee law and every other law, because most of our countries are not party to the Refugee Convention, so we cannot make them work on that. And I mean, in Indian courts often go as, why should we follow international law? So understanding the interactions between international law and domestic laws is where the keys lie. So thank you. Now I am going to move on with a conversation with Puja Kumari, who is our client and also one of our most active clients. When I say that, it includes our clients who pay us. Puja makes sure she listens to all the arguments, gives us her critical comments, tells us how we can get better at our work, tells us exactly how we should do our case. So we want to talk to Puja about her experiences going through her cases, and what basically her case was the case of a domestic violence matter. Since the case is in the court, we will not talk much about the facts of the case or how we strategize the case, etc. We will particularly try talking about the background Puja comes from, which is a migrant worker background, and how as a woman within that background she feels placed. So Puja, thank you हमारे साथ आने के लिए. And we are going to speak in Hindi because Puja speaks Hindi. Tarannum will just summarize what Puja says. Tarannum and I will summarize what Puja says. Thank you Puja हमारे साथ आने के लिए. आप नहीं, ऑडियो यहाँ से आ जाएगा, हमारा कनेक्टेड है. आप पहली बात आप हमें बताइए आपके बारे में. आप आपके घर आप कौन से परिवार से आते हैं और आप की शादी के बारे में उसके थोड़ा सा हमें बताइए, जिस हालात में, जिस माहौल में आपका केस बना। बोलो, बात कर, कोई बात आ रही है। हाँ,
हम बिहार, मतलब मेरा नाम पूजा कुमारी हुआ, हम बिहार के रहने वाले हैं और हमारी शादी बहुत जल्दी में हुई थी।
शादी जल्दी में हुई थी, तुमने मना किया था शादी से?
हाँ, शादी के लिए मैंने मना किया था कि लड़का सही नहीं है, शादी मत करो, फिर भी ये लोग जबरदस्ती इन्होंने शादी करवाया।
और तुम्हारा परिवार कहाँ से है?
बिहार से है।
बिहार से है, तो तुम बिहार से तुम्हारा परिवार दिल्ली कैसे पहुंचा?
यहाँ पे हम लोग, मतलब मेरे पापा काम करते हैं और पूरे परिवार एक साथ रहते हैं।
तो तुम प्रवासी मजदूर
हाँ,
है तुम्हारे पापा, तो वो यहाँ रहते हैं परिवार के साथ। और तुम औरत होने के नाते तुम्हारे साथ कैसे कोई भेदभाव हुआ है? तुम्हारा परिवार तुम्हारे साथ कैसे?
भेदभाव बहुत ज्यादा हुआ है, मतलब ना ही अपने घर में और ना ही ससुराल में हमें मतलब अपनापन महसूस होता है, कहीं पे भी अपनापन महसूस नहीं होता है।
और ससुराल में भी तुम्हारे साथ अत्याचार हुआ पूरी?
हाँ, बहुत ज्यादा अत्याचार हुआ।
ठीक है, मैं बता दूं सबको तुमने जो कहा है, फिर हम आगे बढ़ जाएंगे। So Pooja says that she comes from a migrant worker family. Her father migrated from Bihar. They came here in Delhi to work, and he's a laborer. And she has been disregarded within her own household, in her father's household, and also after she got married, and in her matrimonial household, in her husband's household, where she was tortured and not taken care of and unloved. And she particularly says that she does not feel loved, whether it's her parents' house or her husband's house. It's the sense of belonging is what she misses. फिर आपका जो केस हुआ, जो आप लेकर आए अपने पति के खिलाफ, उसके बारे में जब आपने बात की अपने घर वालों से, और उनका कैसा मन रहा केस के बारे में?
उन्होंने ये बोला कि मतलब लड़की हो, लड़की को सहना पड़ता है, मतलब वो लोग जैसा कह रहे हैं वैसा ठीक है, जैसे हो वैसे उन लोग के साथ एडजस्ट करो।
So I asked her when she decided to pursue a case of domestic violence and torture against her husband and his family, how did his family, the migrant worker family, react? And her family, Pooja says that her family said that you have to adjust and not do any case and learn to live with what you got. And they were not at all supportive of what she said or what she proposed. फिर पूजा, फिर क्या हुआ? फिर तुम पुलिस के पास गई? तुम अपना
पुलिस के पास गई, मैं अपने ससुराल वाले के घर पे गई, तो वहां पे गई तो वो लोग घर में घुसने नहीं दिए। 100 नंबर को बुलाया तो पुलिस ने भी बोला कि आपस में बैठ के मतलब पंचायत कर लो या आपस का बीच का कोई रास्ता निकाल लो, और जो मतलब पैसा वैसा ये लोग दे रहे हैं वो सब लेके अपना दूसरी शादी कर दो।
So Pooja tried to return to her matrimonial house, and there was enough pressure on her to also go back. And when she did, they did not allow her to get inside the house, and she was thrown away practically. And out of desperation, Pooja called the helpline number for the police and tried to seek their help. The police came in and said, "Don't take legal action. These are not the kind of things that you should be doing." And they suggested that she does a panchayat, which is basically getting all the elders of the family and the family members sit down and discuss a form of settlement in the form of informal mediation, but invariably presided by men, and a decision that her husband and his family would finally take, and settle with whatever little money or alimony, whatever you're getting, or if nothing at all, and get out of this and find your life from there. So they refused to give her any legal recourse per se. फिर तुम पुलिस को फिर भी जबरदस्ती कंप्लेन देने
पुलिस को हमने कंप्लेन देने का कोशिश किया तो पुलिस नहीं लिया, और दोबारा कॉल करके बोल रहे हैं कि आके पंचायत कर लो, आपस में बीच का कोई रास्ता निकाल के जो कुछ मिल रहा है लेके बैठ जाओ।
अच्छा, फिर कंप्लेन कब लिया वापस?
कंप्लेन उन्होंने लिया ही नहीं। जो कुछ वहां पे कुछ लिख के उल्टा सीधा अपना लेके लिख के गए और फिर उसके बाद कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया.
And the police absolutely was refusing to take her complaint, and she kept on they kept on calling her and telling that listen, just find a middle ground, settle the matter, and do the panchayat, do anything informal, do not even think about taking any action against your husband. That's going to be worse than anything else. फिर क्या हुआ?
फिर हम सरकारी वकील के पास गए, वहाँ पे भी गए, हमने अपना सारा बात बताया, तो वो बोले कि नहीं ये सारा मतलब तुम्हारे खिलाफ है, ये सबसे कुछ नहीं होने वाला है, बीच का कोई रास्ता निकाल लो, उन्होंने भी बोला. दूसरे प्राइवेट वकील के पास गए तो बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा मांग रहे थे, 1 साल का मतलब 50,000 रुपये, और जैसे कोई बात का सलाह लेना हो तो उसका 500 रुपये फीस.
So I asked her what happened after this, and they had the police just did some basic writing, but never quite pursued upon the case. So she went to the legal aid provided by the state, and such a legal aid lawyer, and asked for her assistance. So looking at the case, this was a woman lawyer who said that no, it's your fault, it's entirely your fault, and if you file a case against your husband, you are the one who's going to be framed, because the entire case is against you, and you better not go again, file a case, and take a middle path, settle the matter. Same thing about a panchayat, and get rid of this whole thing. This entire idea of doing a case against your husband is absolutely absurd. Don't go for it. Then she went for another lawyer who was practicing lawyers, an independent practicing lawyer, who gave her an advice to come up with whatever case. But he said that I'm going to do your case if you only pay 50,000 rupees to me for the entire year. And per consultation, every time you come to visit me, you have to pay me 500 rupees. And she comes from a migrant worker background. Needless to say, it is not possible to pay that kind of money. And जो अलग वाला वकील था, उसने कुछ पर्ची का भी तुम्हें
हाँ, उन्होंने बोला क्या कि जो कुछ भी पर्ची है उससे अलग भी कुछ और पर्ची बनवा लो, जिससे लड़के वाले से बढ़ा चढ़ा के कोर्ट में बोल के ज्यादा पैसे ले.
हाँ, और
ज्यादा पैसे ले, और इससे हमारा केस सही रहेगा, ज्यादा दबाव बनेगा.
And he also gave a very interesting suggestion in that one consultation, that whatever evidence you have, so she had paid a very huge dowry while getting married, uh, and she had the receipts. So the lawyer said that make some fake and false receipts, come up with some false allegations, and make the case completely huge by making these false allegations, which Puja was very uncomfortable doing, like any other client would be. But that was an advice that she was given, which she did not accept. उसके बाद क्या हुआ?
उसके बाद थोड़े समय के लिए हम घर में बैठ गए, कहीं पे कोई अच्छा वकील नहीं मिल रहा था, तो फिर उसके बाद आपसे मिले.
सेकेंड, अभी तक बोल दो, मेरे पास आगे बोलना. तो after that she was so frustrated by the scheme of things, she decided not to pursue the case at all, because she was not finding a lawyer who she was able to trust, and she just didn't know where to go, and there was also so much pressure from her family and elsewhere, and she was quite stressed about the process. And after that she met me. Just to give a background, how she met me is she met me through a social worker who is also Puja's justice hero. Her name is Sucheta De, and she's a social worker and political activist in India. And she referred Puja to me, and then that's how she met me. अब फिर क्या हुआ मुझसे मिलने के बाद?
आपसे मिलने के बाद मतलब केस आपने हर बात को सुनी, हर बात को समझा, और उसके बाद केस कोर्ट तक गया, और वहां पे जाने के बाद मतलब हर बात कोर्ट तक पहुंच रही है, और हर जो कुछ मतलब बना है केस, मतलब जो कुछ केस में लिखा है, जो कुछ वहां से आ रहा है रिप्लाई में, वो सब मुझे भी पता है.
So when she came, sorry, yeah.
So she says that when she met Ujjeni, it was more of an informed approach that Ujjeni took, and it was easier for her to understand what was going on in her case. And earlier, because she was discouraged from pursuing any kind of litigation, this was a fresh approach that she understood that, that her case was actually right, and she should not be dissuaded from pursuing any kind of litigation, and that her allegations, which she was already making, were strong enough for her to be able to get some kind of justice, to get justice against the domestic violence that was being conducted against her in a daily manner. And she also understood her rights, which she had against the police, that was not filing her complaint. She understood that she has a right to get it recorded, and that she should not be dissuaded from continuing the case any longer.
Thank you, Tara. And she also felt that now she has a control over her case because she is able to read the replies that are being filed, and her advice is being taken at every step. And she's also able to speak her mind in the matter. Now we'll continue speaking to Pooja. और आगे अगर आप आपकी तरह किसी औरत से मिलती है तो आप उनको क्या सलाह देना चाहेंगी?
मेरे जैसे अगर किसी और के साथ ऐसा होता है तो मतलब वो सही समय पे सही अपना रास्ता निकाल के, मतलब कोई ठोस अपना रास्ता निकाल के अलग हो जाना ही सही है।
और वकालत में जब वकील के साथ जब कोई ऐसी औरत वकील के पास जाती है तो क्या देख के उसे तय करना चाहिए कि वो उस वकील के साथ काम करेंगी या नहीं?
क्योंकि वकील जो है, वकील को तो हर चीज पता रहता है, वो जैसा बताते हैं वैसा वो अगला मानता है कि नहीं ऐसा ही होता है, लेकिन वकील जो उनके साथ जो करते हैं वो गलत करते हैं।
Right. So I asked her, what would be your advice to women like you now if you meet any? She says that I would ask them to find a strong way solution so that they can empower themselves, and also I would encourage them to walk out of their marriages, because if they're not happy, they should not be in a marriage. And then I asked her, what do you think? How do you think they should evaluate their lawyers when they're going for any legal aid or participation? She says that when you're in front of a lawyer, the lawyer knows everything and trusts them completely. So it is very important that you're able to find trust in a lawyer to be able to work with her. आगे आप अगर हमें सलाह देना चाहती है कैसे हम ये काम जो करते हैं बिछड़ी हुए औरतों के लिए, प्रवासी मजदूरों के लिए, और जो रोहिंग्या जो रेफ्यूजी है उन सब के लिए, हम अपना काम बेहतर कैसे कर सकते हैं? जैसे कि मान लो हमने आपके साथ जब बात की, आप हम पे भरोसा कर पाए, हम अपना काम जैसे भी कर रहे हैं उसको आप तक पहुंचा पाए, आपको समझा पाए, तो इसी तरह से किस तरह हम अपना काम करते जाएंगे तो अच्छे से काम होगा, कैसे अच्छे से काम चलेगा? अगर आप हमारी जगह होती तो जैसे आप जैसी औरतों की सहायता आप कैसे करती? हम कैसे, क्या समझना जरूरी है हम वकीलों के लिए जब हम आपका काम करने जाते हैं?
सबसे पहले मतलब उनकी बातों को समझना, उनकी बातों को अगर समझेंगे तो मतलब कोई भी रास्ते का सही रास्ता निकलेगा।
Right. So I asked her that what can we as lawyers learn and do better to be able to reach out to the marginalized women in order to do the work that we do better. And she says that the most important thing is to understand their experiences and to be able to narrate these experiences through your legal knowledge so that the representation is really true and actually happening. And there is also one more advice Pooja had given us outside of this interview. Now she's very nervous to tell this, but she had told me that I should laugh a bit more while talking to her and not be very strict all the time. And she thinks that I'm very strict, and sometimes she gets scared that I'm going to get angry if she doesn't give me her papers right or doesn't do her affidavits on time, etc. So I'm going to make a note of that and smile a little more while I'm talking to her, and not always create a very tension mode while working. So that's also a learning as lawyers, that we have to build a conducive environment which is a bit more trauma informed, and also to kind of relax our clients. That's something that we learned from Puja, which she told us as a comment.
To add to this, it is a very refreshing experience that Puja is actually one of the stronger women who actually came out and spoke about their experiences. Generally, women are dissuaded, like she said, from pursuing any kind of legal action against their in-laws, because women are in a way treated like property and seen as the property of the father before the marriage and of the husband after their marriage. So concerning her situation and situations where poor families given a lot of dowry and a lot of money while getting their females married, it becomes really difficult for women to leave such situations and, to get any kind of legal recourse, especially when the recourse is very costly. Like she said, that with the private lawyer, the lawyer was upfront asking her for something of the amount of 500,000, which is something which is unaffordable and extremely unimaginable by a migrant worker, and then asking her to pay a consultation fees every time she came up to him and spoke to him, while also misguiding her during his consultation, telling her to file for false charges, which were not something that a lawyer should have been guiding her for, and telling her that, your normal case is not strong enough. I think that there needs to be more of a legal connect in their in their local languages, which helps them understand what is going on in the case and what is happening at each and every step, because it becomes very procedural and hectic for a normal person to understand these court proceedings.
Thank you, Tara. Now, if anybody wants to ask any questions to Puja or any of us, please give us your questions. I think you can unmute yourself and speak as well, or give us your questions in the chat box, whichever you're comfortable with. Pooja is right here, and she's happy to answer your questions. And also, we are very glad that Pooja is with us, because we feel that it's important to have the kind of representation that the migrant community and refugee communities deserve. And we would be really happy to get our Rohingya friends also here, but we did not, for security reasons and for their safety purpose, for the purposes of their safety. But there is so much they had to share as well for this conference. And as we move on, we would only want them to be more part of the work that we do. So in future, hopefully we are established more as lawyers, so we are able to have paralegals and law clerks working with us and helping us with our court work, etc. We would want to have Puja and various other Rohingya friends whom we have to work with us, and so that we're also able to pay them, and that would help them also with livelihoods and sense of recognition and identity. No questions? All right, so even if you have questions coming up later on and after the session as well, please be free to be in touch. Like Puja is right here, we are all right here, and happy to answer your questions or any comments or anything that you want to interact with us. This is a picture of the Rohingya camp. This is where people, human beings, live with chicken, and around waste of chicken and chicken dirt and animals, and this is the kind of situation they live in. They prefer living in there. They only hope that they're allowed to live here among snake bites, open defecation, no toilets, no water, and this is the best that they can think of. This is a picture of a detention camp, a detention center, which they call Seva Kendra. And also, because we are so inspired by The Last Girl and the book by Nadia Murad, we also hope to reach out to every single woman in our society, in our country, across the world probably someday, who have faced sexual and gender-based violence and have been marginalized in any manner whatsoever, and to give them the support that they deserve. Right. So we are hoping to, of course, we already discussed our projects, and we are hoping to build team and create support groups. And mental health is something that we really want to focus on. And we are trying to get in touch with the mental health professionals or organizations who are able to give us some pro bono support. And also kind of course, we don't want entirely pro bono support, because we do have clients of domestic violence, etc., who are able to pay us. So we can probably kind of create a balancing act there, so they can do some pro bono and some paid matters like we are doing. So that's also something we are trying to work on. Now I'll give the place to Mayur to talk about client-based lawyering, because we just finished speaking about a client and who spoke about what she understands of client-based lawyering. So let Mayur just take from there and discuss about how he kind of conducts the client-based lawyering of our office.
Oh, hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mayur Priyan. So, firstly, I would like to thank Ms. Ujjaini and Ms. Taranum for their lovely insights till now. They've been throwing a lot of light onto the matters that we've been doing, and it's really encouraging for us, to share this with a lovely audience like you. Now, before I and also a special thanks to Puja, because without her, this entire client-based lawyering session, which I'm about to move on, would not be possible. It would just be yet another session without any inside lens into our work that we are doing. So before
Okay, now you'll be audible.
okay,
Speak, sorry.
okay. So I don't think I was audible since the beginning.
Um, 1 second. Taranum, could you just let us know till where Mayur was audible? I think there was a mistake here. I got muted suddenly. Only the last line.
Okay, great. So yeah, so before I could move on to the client-based lawyering approach that we deal with, firstly, I would like to give a brief introduction about the art work that we are dealing with for the Rohingya community and the migrant workers. So, I am Mayur. I am the artist that Taranum and Ujjaini were talking about. So, why we took this approach of depicting the struggles of Rohingyas and the migrant workers through art is, as an artist, I've come across a lot of different types of refugee art that have been showcased in the world, in and around the world, and most of them, I personally find it to be generic. It shows the migration of a community from the point of the place of persecution to another place where they seek refuge. But that is not something we would want to represent in our paintings or in the artworks that we would like to showcase the world. Because I saw a question that had popped up in the chat box saying, "How are we going to raise awareness amongst the youth?" That we have the art work that we deal with is pointing towards that. It is dealing with the awareness that we are hoping to raise amongst the youth. How? The youth or the present generation is not just they are not going to be interested in viewing a generic approach on how a community was migrated from one place to another. Rather, if the current generation or anybody who's looking at the piece of art understand the culture of the Rohingyas or the migrant workers, then there would be some point of connect between the audience and the communities whom we are showcasing through the picture. I personally believe that a civilization dies slowly when their culture also dies with them. So, like how Jenny was talking about the Afghan refugees, how they are a little better than the Rohingyas because their culture is still alive amidst various populations. But when we go into the culture of Rohingyas, we get to know that even their language now it's extinct. Now they are latching on to an English script, and a language which is very, very modern, which came across in the last 30 years, which is their new language. So there is no particular language that they speak which is native to them. So we are hoping to talk to them and try to get as much information about their culture, because refugees, yes, a major part of their life dwells in sadness, in in looking into the unknown territory that is ahead of them. But at the same time, we need to understand that they are also humans. They also have their own celebrations, little celebrations. They also have their own festivals. They also have their own food, their cuisines, which is unnoticed. We are trying to get these back from the refugees and showcase it to the world that yes, they are not just refugees, they are a part of a civilization which had their own culture. And that culture, if we don't let it die, it will start gaining its roots, and that we are hoping it would become a huge free in the future. So that is the purpose of art, and that is how we are planning to raise awareness amongst the youth. Now I'm moving on to my presentation, which is the client-based lawyering approach, which Puja had very well initiated. So the first thing that we want to tell you, our organization is pro clients. So like any advocate or any lawyer, any legal firm or an organization is towards client-based approach only. What is so new about this? Because we feel that this client-based approach in the present scenario is only theoretically applicable in a lot of the organizations that we have come across till now. So the first thing that we are doing is we have a 5-step approach. First, we prepare the briefs according to the wishes of the clients alone. We do not put ourselves before the client. The client always takes the center space. The client's instructions reach us first, and all the drafts that we do is according to the wishes and the instructions of the client. That is to be followed. Then second is information, which Puja showed through her interview what she was doing. So I heard Puja saying that she's going to go back to her community and tell the women who are suffering that you are not going to suffer anymore, you're going to take the legal approach. That is precisely what we talk about when we say information. Information means when we do our drafting, when we come across laws, we also share that information with the client. We try to educate the client with as much legal knowledge as possible so that they are not handicapped with the legal procedures. They go around, they act as our agents and tell their community that no, you're not alone when you're suffering. You have your own rights. Your rights can be implemented through legal recourse, and you are not alone in this world. So this is informing the client that they have their rights, and through that empowering them. Then we have training. Training is not like we are a team of 3 lawyers, but at the same time we have a lot of paralegals and a lot of volunteers and interns working along with us. So these we don't want the interns or paralegals or the volunteers to go out of our base and core ideologies, which is feminist based lawyering. We want them to be trained, and we want a standardized procedure that has to be followed by all the members in our organization. So that is the kind of training that we do to our volunteers and interns. And the fourth is availability. We have a 24/7 available number through which clients can contact us whenever they want. There is no restriction. Ms. Tara, Ujjaini, and me, we all handle this number, and we've taken calls throughout the night, throughout the day. There is no bar to the timings. So we make ourselves available. We go to the camps, we share our contact details, we share pamphlets, we share this information to them. Right now, the camps around Delhi, most of them have our contact details, our email IDs, our contact numbers, our visiting cards with them. So in a day, we get at least 20 to 30 calls from refugees, and our phone just doesn't stop ringing. That And we also don't neglect these calls because we know how important it is, because uh, the communities that we are going to, the communities that we go to, they don't have easy access to mobile. So when they are making a call, it means it is important. So we don't have the luxury of avoiding these calls. So that is why we make ourselves available 24/7 throughout the day, throughout the night, throughout the rain, through winters, summers, whatever it may be. We are there for them. And lastly, it's the knowledge, not about the laws, but about the background of your client, because that is very, very important. When we asked Pooja how can we make ourselves better, that's exactly what she told us. You need to understand the struggles that we go through. We shouldn't sympathize with them, we should empathize with them. We should put ourselves in their position and see what is the struggle that the client is going through. If we are in their position, what would we do with our legally impaired mind? The client's mind is not legally, they are not an educated lawyer, but we are. So if we as a lawyer put ourselves in the place of the victim, what would we do? We are taking that particular approach. That is where we are going. Then so these are the five step approach that we are dealing with. So Ujjaini, do you have any?
Yeah, so I just want to add like what to
Yes.
what Mayur said. Also, some of the calls we get is panic calls, and we are aware that it can get a little overwhelming or annoying for certain lawyers. But we also make sure that we do take these panic calls. We are not mental health professionals, and it's not advisable that we give mental health guidance also. But sometimes, if you can't give a solution, at least give a shoulder to cry on. And it's a terrible thing to say, because I personally as a lawyer feel very incomplete if I'm not able to approach the court with a particular issue, or at least get a solution to it. But I feel that the conversations and the discussions often give us ideas of what we can actually do, and it has happened, and we have been able to find solutions when we talk and discuss the method. So that's also a way of interacting with the community and understanding them and their struggles. It's a very important factor of the work that we do. And especially when we talk about knowledge, as I also said earlier, we have to be the best at our jobs, because when we go to the court, we're going to have the best of well paid state lawyers who are going to stand up with us with all their resources, stand up against us with all their available resources. And we are just going to be us, and we have to be so good at our job and have that standardized approach of professionalism in the work that we do, that we are able to stand up in the work in the kind of arguments that we're trying to make. And
And speaking of professionalism, this is an important aspect that we have to touch upon. See, there is a lot of talk about pro bono cases that lawyers handle. It's like a god complex for lawyers. Handling pro bono cases means we are doing something great. No, that's not really the case. Pro bono case is our approach is pro bono case is yet another case, but we don't mean it in the way we are saying yet another case, because we treat all the cases equally. And that is the kind of professionalism we aim to achieve. There is no difference between a paid case or a pro bono case. We give the same amount of priority if we are giving for a case that we are getting paid for, and the case which we are taking as pro bono. We are trying to bridge that gap. So, and the pro bono work also, we are trying to limit it as much as possible, because we see it as uh, like how a person is going to a grocery store. If he's buying a packet of bread, he's going to pay that nominal amount for that bread. So that is how we are also trying to see our lawyering as. So, like, the clients who can pay the bare minimum fee, that is all we take from them. And the remaining clients who we who are well off, for them we charge the fee which is enough to pay us the rent for the office and our day-to-day activities. So that is what we mean by bridging the gap between pro bono lawyering and the paid work that we do.
And about preparation training, Mayur has already explained to us. And of course, availability is something that's very important. We hope to build a network of lawyers who understand issues of feminist human rights lawyering, and spread the kind of work we do, so that we come from a similar mindset, we come from a similar uh, wiring by which we feel for the communities that we are working from. Because somewhere, I mean, they're all human beings, we all have the same set of emotions, it's just that they have had aggravated trauma, and to be able to deal with this trauma, we have to translate their experiences in the vocabulary of legal grammar that we are trained in. We are trained lawyers. It's our job to translate all these whispers that we hear, all these sounds and noises that we hear in the legal language, in the legal vocabulary. If I'm a doctor, I'm going to use my medical vocabulary. If I'm a mental health therapist, I'm going to use my mental health knowledge. But as professionals, we use our vocabulary to just become a medium for these voices to travel. And if we are good lawyers, we do that really well. So I think that's our presentation. So maybe we can. I don't think we have in a. I think we have two questions, but they are in a language I don't understand. So if somebody could translate it for me.
No, that's not a question. She's mentioned about her signal. It's not being very well. Yeah.
Sorry. So I think we are fairly a small group here. So maybe you can give us your questions or comments or feedback or just an idea or anything on the either on the chat box, or just raise your hands or unmute yourself and speak to us if we can have a conversation. And I mean, if you have any experience in working in your country, if you've had any, I mean, situation where you've come across the dichotomies that we face, it would be very interesting to know, because we are doing this work quite independently, and we try to understand how we can hold international organizations, our states accountable, and find a better mechanism to be able to deal with the people, the social groups that we deal with. And of course, a very big issue is the issue of fundraising that has been discussed early on. And we are trying to find ways in which we can collaborate and work with others and find ways of generating funds and resources to be able to help the Rohingya community and Rohingya refugees in India, as well as the migrant workers within India. So I would really appreciate if anybody has any comments, any questions, any feedback, any ideas, anything. Even if not now, you can be in touch with us later. I'm dropping our email ID. Uh, Tara, you can probably give the email ID of LSI. And I'm also dropping my own email ID in case anybody wants to get in touch. Um, And we are also, in fact, just last night and this morning, we activated our Twitter and Instagram profile. And we'll be very happy if you are following us or looking out for our updates. And Tara, is it possible to also share the Twitter link here? Twitter and Instagram link? Okay, thank you. We are sharing that as well in case you want to follow our updates or support us and just say good words about us, or even bad words if you think, if you want, if you have any comments. And um, also, I mean, there are various other initiatives that we hope to come up with in the upcoming days, and we would be very happy to share our ongoing work and findings and publications. And if you share your contacts with us, we shall be in touch with you, and we shall speak to you directly and get in touch for collaborations, etc. Um, so we do not have any questions. um, that's great then. So if at all you have any questions, please reach out to us. And if you have any suggestions and ways we can work better, um, it would be very good. And our Instagram profile is out there on the chat box if anybody wants to follow us on Instagram. And Taranum will share the Twitter um, uh, account shortly. And Also, we are going to be coming up with our blog, and because we don't want to spend on a website yet, so we are coming up with a blog to discuss the work that we do, the publications that we have, and all the requirements in terms of suggestions and collaborations and ways in which we can work together. And we'll be very happy to be in touch with all of you and see if we can work better. I understand, I think this is the last session of the conference, and clearly we're all quite tired. And I would not take a long time unless it's needed, because I think we have 5 more minutes. But if we do not require 5 minutes, I'm happy to end the session here. I'll share the Twitter account before we leave, just a little publicity. Right, so yeah, it's up there. Great. So
I
that's
think someone raised hand.
yes.
Oh,
Yes, Palam. Hi.
เจ้าข้าพเจ้าภัยลำพันธ์เนาะมาจากสถาบันยุติธรรมแห่งชาติสาขาหลวงพระบางผ่านที่ข้าพเจ้าได้เข้าได้เข้าร่วมกองประชุมในครั้งนี้แล้วก็ได้ฟังการรายงานของปัญหาที่อยู่ในประเทศของพวกท่านข้าพเจ้าก็บ่มีคำถามเนาะแต่ว่าข้าพเจ้าข้อเป็นหนึ่งกำลังใจที่มีความยุ่งยากมีความซับซ้อนและก็เป็นปัญหาที่ท้าทายต่อพวกท่านอยู่ในประเทศของพวกท่านแต่ว่าเห็นได้ว่าความพยายามของพวกท่านได้มีความเสียสละมีความเอาใจใส่แล้วก็ต่อกับปัญหาดังกล่าวเพื่อเฮ็ดให้แม่หญิงที่ถูกประสบภัยต่างๆเหล่านั้นได้เข้าถึงความยุติธรรมเนาะแน่นอนว่าสิ่งท้าทายแล้วนั้นมันยังมีอุปสรรคหลายๆอย่างถ้าข้าพเจ้าเนาะอยู่ไกลข้าพเจ้าก็คงเข้าร่วมในการเป็นอาสาสมัครเพื่อเข้าไปช่วยเหลืออยู่นำประเทศของพวกท่านแต่ว่าเดี๋ยวได้พอดีเนาะถึงมาอาจจะอยู่ไกลกันแต่ว่าข้าพเจ้าขอเป็นหนึ่งกำลังใจให้วิงานของพวกท่านจงประสบความสำเร็จและเฮ็ดให้เกิดมีการเปลี่ยนแปลงถึงแม้ว่ามันจะเป็นเพียงจุดเริ่มต้นหรือว่าการเปลี่ยนแปลงนั้นมันจะยากเพราะว่ามันเว้าถึงการเปลี่ยนแปลงเกี่ยวกับความเชื่อถือวัฒนธรรมฮิตของประเพณีตัวนี้เป็นปัญหาที่ยากที่สุดข้าพเจ้าคิดว่าการที่จะให้เกิดการเปลี่ยนแปลงในไปทางที่มันควรจะไปเนาะเปลี่ยนแปลงไปในทางที่มันเห็นว่ามีความเป็นธรรมให้แก่ผู้แต่ว่าข้าพเจ้าก็เชื่อมั่นในความเสียสละของพวกท่านเชื่อมั่นในความกล้าหาญของพวกท่านและก็ที่พวกท่านได้ตั้งใจเฮ็ดให้มันเนาะเฮ็ดให้รุ่นลูกหลานที่จะเติบใหญ่มาให้เข้าใจถึงจุดที่เฮาต้องการอยากจะไปเอาไม้ตัวนั้นเนาะฉะนั้นข้าพเจ้าบ่มีหยังเลยมีแต่ขอเป็นกำลังใจและก็ส่งเสริมผลงานของพวกท่านและขอให้พวกท่านสืบต่อเฮ็ดหน้าที่ตัวนี้ให้มันประสบความสำเร็จเนาะถ้าว่ามีโอกาสข้าพเจ้าเองก็อยากเข้าไปช่วยเหลือเช่นกันเนาะขอบใจ
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's unmute only. You can.
Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful comment, and it's so nice to hear your kind words. And we would love to have you as a volunteer, especially to learn from your work and exchange our ideas and talk. So our contacts are right on the chat box. Maybe you can just drop us an email or just get in touch with us, and we would just see how we can work this out. And yes, we really hope that the initiative works and you're able to take this forward and hopefully come back next year to you with better updates and get more questions from you and have, something good to share in terms of good orders or something good about Puja's case probably, or the Rohingya matters that we are doing. And really, it is a job that we're trying to do in terms of bringing the youth and the population closer to the Rohingyas and the migrant communities. So thank you very much for your comment.
Yep. Okay. Please wait for the magic word. Our secretary will put it up right now. And once again, thank you all of our panelists, for your wonderful sharing experience.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great being here.
Okay, so your magic word is the social enterprise. Yeah, I have all of your emails, and hopefully we can keep in touch. And have some coordination in the future. Okay. Once again, thanks so much, and thanks for being with us during the past 3 days. And I think some of you probably have been with us since the APBC virtually, since last Friday. So, okay, see you on the next session, which will be our close ceremony. Okay, in the next 30 minutes. Thank you once again.
Bye bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Thank you.